The message came on a quiet morning, the kind of morning when nothing important is supposed to happen. It arrived at every human relay station at the same second, translated into perfect Earth English by machines that had learned the language only to deliver bad news. The message was short. It did not argue. It did not explain. It simply told humanity to leave. By order of the Selene Dominion, all human vessels, colonies, and installations are to withdraw from Dominion space within 100 days. Failure to comply will be treated as an act of war. This is not a request. That was the whole message. No greeting, no signature. Just a deadline stamped with the seal of an empire that had existed for 11,000 years. An empire that had swallowed 40 other species, without losing a single major fleet. Admiral Rhea Okafor read the message twice in her office on the space station Meridian, high above the human colony world of New Kavanaugh. She was 51 years old, gray at the temples, and she had spent 30 years building the small but proud human fleet from a handful of survey ships into something that could, on a good day, hold its own against pirates and rogue AI. It had never been built to fight an empire. Nobody had built it for that, because nobody had believed it would ever be necessary. Humanity had only known about the wider galaxy for 60 years. It had only met the Selene Dominion 8 years ago, and that meeting had been polite, distant, almost friendly. Trade had started. A few scientists had been exchanged. There had been talk, slow and careful, of a treaty. Now there was this. Rhea called an emergency session of the Human Defense Council within the hour. Representatives from every major colony, joined by holoscreen, Earth, Mars, New Kavanaugh, the orbital cities around Jupiter, the mining stations at Kepler-62, and the newest and smallest colony, a research outpost called Second Chance, sitting quietly at the edge of Dominion territory. Second Chance was the reason the ultimatum had come at all, though nobody on the council knew that yet. "They want us gone," said Councillor Wen Zhao, his face pale on the screen. "All of us. Every ship, every colony, every person. Gone from what they call Dominion space, which is, let's be honest, most of the galaxy we've mapped so far." "It's not a negotiation," Rhea said. "It's an eviction notice." "Do we have a choice?" asked another counselor, an older woman, named Priya Anand, who represented the Mars settlements. "Our entire fleet is 31 ships. Their fleet, by our own intelligence estimates, numbers in the thousands. We cannot win a war against the Dominion. We would not even slow them down." Nobody in the meeting disagreed with the math. The Dominion had been an empire since before humans had learned to write. It had assimilated species with faster-than-light travel, 2,000 years before humanity invented the airplane. Its warships were the size of small moons. Its territory stretched across a third of the galaxy, held together by a strict and ancient law that Rhea had read many times: obedience in exchange for protection. Every species inside the Dominion followed the same rules, paid the same tribute, and in return, the Dominion kept them safe from worse things that lived beyond its borders. Humanity was not a member of the Dominion. Humanity was, as far as the Dominion was concerned, an unregistered species occupying Dominion territory without permission. That was the truth buried inside the polite trade talks of the last 8 years. Humans had simply never been told to leave before now. "There has to be a reason this is happening now," Rhea said. Something changed. 8 years of quiet contact, and suddenly a 100-day ultimatum. "Find me the reason." It took the Council's intelligence officers 11 hours to find it, and when they did, it was almost funny in a terrible way. Second Chance, the small research outpost at the edge of Dominion space, had been studying a strange energy signature drifting through a nearby nebula. 2 months ago, the outpost scientists had realized the signature was not natural. It was a ship. A very old, very large, very dead ship, drifting for who knew how many thousands of years, built by a species nobody in the Dominion's records could identify. The scientists at Second Chance had done exactly what scientists do. They had gotten excited, and they had sent a full report back to Earth, unencrypted, on a public science channel, because nobody had told them to do otherwise. The Dominion had been listening. The Dominion, it turned out, listened to everything. "The ship in the nebula," said the young intelligence officer presenting the findings, a nervous man named Dax Whitfield, "matches records the Dominion has of something they call the Architects." From what we can piece together, the architects are the reason the Dominion built its empire the way it did. They were the first great power in this part of the galaxy, and something happened to them, something the Dominion has spent thousands of years trying to make sure never happens again. We don't know what, but whatever it was, it scared them badly enough that they built their entire civilization around never letting it happen twice. And humanity just stumbled onto one of their old ships and told everyone about it, Priya said quietly. Yes. So they're not just kicking us out because we're new, Ria said, working it through out loud. They're kicking us out because we found something we shouldn't have found, and they don't trust us to leave it alone. They think we're a variable they can't control. So they're removing the variable. That's our best guess, Dax said. The council argued for 6 more hours. Some wanted to comply immediately, evacuate everything, and beg for time to figure out where humanity could go instead. Some wanted to try diplomacy, to send envoys and explain that the discovery had been an accident, that humanity meant no harm. A few, a very small few, wanted to fight, though even they admitted there was no realistic way to win. In the end, the council voted. Compliance. All ships, all colonies, all outposts, inside what the Dominion called its space, would withdraw within the 100 days. It was not a vote anyone was proud of, but it was, everyone agreed, the only vote that would keep humanity alive to try again another day. The order went out to every human vessel in Dominion territory. Come home, pack up, leave. Every ship obeyed. Every ship except one. The UES Steadfast was not a large ship by galactic standards, though it was one of the finest the human fleet had. It was a heavy cruiser, built in the shipyards above Mars 12 years earlier, 300 meters of gray hull, twin rail cannons along its spine, and a crew of 240 men and women who had trained together for years. It was currently stationed at Second Chance, the very outpost that had started this whole mess, because someone had to protect the scientists there while they finished packing up their research and their lives. Its captain was a man named Elias Marsh. He was 44, broad-shouldered, with a quiet way of speaking that made people listen closer instead of louder. He had grown up on Earth, in a small coastal town that no longer existed because the sea had reclaimed it, decades before he was born, on a colony rebuilt from the ashes of an old flooded world. He had joined the fleet at 18 and had never left it. He believed in 2 things above all else: that his people looked after each other, and that walking away from a fight was sometimes brave, and sometimes just cowardice wearing a brave man's coat. He received the withdrawal order at 0600 ship time. He read it standing on the bridge, his coffee going cold in his hand. His first officer, Commander Yuki Tanaka, watching him carefully. "Orders are orders, sir," Yuki said, though her voice did not sound entirely convinced of her own words. "They are," Elias agreed. He looked at the view screen. Second Chance hung there, a modest ring of habitats and labs, home to 300 scientists and their families, people who had spent years building a life on the edge of known space, because they believed in learning things nobody else had learned yet. Beyond the station, the nebula glowed faintly, and somewhere inside it, that ancient dead ship still drifted, its secrets untouched. "How long to get everyone off Second Chance and back across the border?" Elias asked. "At the rate they're packing, 6 more weeks," Yuki said. "They have equipment worth more than most of the fleet, sir. Labs, samples, archives. They don't want to leave it, and honestly, I don't think they should have to. They didn't do anything wrong. They found something. That's what scientists do." "No," Elias said slowly. "They didn't do anything wrong." He set his coffee down. He looked at his crew, the young weapons officer named Priest, who had grown up on a farm on New Kavanaugh, the navigator named Ose, who still talked to her mother back on Earth every week, despite the lightspeed delay, the engineer named Callum, who had built half the ship's systems himself, and loved it like a child. 240 people, 1 ship, and an empire that measured its fleets in the thousands. "Send this to Fleet Command," Elias said. "The Steadfast will remain at Second Chance until the evacuation is complete, and not 1 hour longer. We will not abandon our people to save time. If the Dominion wants us gone before then, they can come and explain that to me directly." Yuki stared at him. "Sir, that's not what the withdrawal order says." "No," Elias agreed. "It isn't." The message went out. "Within 6 hours," Fleet Command replied. ordering Elias in the strongest possible terms to comply immediately and rejoin the main withdrawal. Elias read the order, considered it for a long moment, and then did something no human captain had done in the 60 years since first contact with the wider galaxy. He refused a direct order from Earth. Respectfully declined, he wrote back. The steadfast stays until second chance is safely clear. If command wishes to relieve me of duty, send someone to do it in person. Until then, I have a station full of civilians to protect. Word of the refusal spread through the fleet within a day, and then through the colonies within 2. Some called Elias a fool, a man about to get 240 good people killed over a matter of pride. Others, quietly, in bars and mess halls and family kitchens across every human world, felt something they had not felt in a long time. Something like pride, and something like hope, small and dangerous, and impossible to put out once it had been lit. On the 94th day of the 100-day countdown, the Dominion sent a fleet to Second Chance, to see for themselves why one stubborn human ship was still sitting in space, that no longer belonged to them. Elias watched them arrive on the long-range sensors, ship after ship, blinking into existence at the edge of the system, more of them than his crew could easily count. He did not send for reinforcements, because there were none to send. He did not run, because there was nowhere left to run that would not mean leaving Second Chance defenseless. He walked onto the bridge, looked at the swarm of enemy signals growing on the screen, and said the only thing that felt true. Well, he said, I suppose they got our message. Behind him, his crew straightened at their stations, and the Steadfast, alone against an empire, held its ground. The Dominion fleet did not attack right away. That surprised Elias almost as much as their arrival had. Instead, one ship broke away from the main group, a vessel shaped like a curved blade, dark green and gold, easily 10 times the size of the Steadfast. It slid closer, weapons dark, and opened a channel. The being that appeared on the Steadfast's main screen was tall and thin, with skin the color of old bronze, and eyes that did not blink the way human eyes did. It wore robes marked with symbols Elias did not recognize, though the ship's translator worked fast enough to catch up. I am Fleet Marshal Vren Talkorin, of the Selen Dominion 3rd Border Fleet, the being said, its voice smooth and unhurried, like someone who had given this same speech many times before to many different frightened species. You are Captain Elias Marsh, of the human vessel Steadfast. You are in violation of a lawful withdrawal order. You will explain yourself, and then you will comply. Elias stood at parade rest in front of the screen, hands clasped behind his back. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, monitoring the enemy fleet's positioning, running silent calculations, doing their jobs, even with fear sitting cold in their stomachs. Marshal, Elias said, there are 300 civilians on the station behind me, scientists, families, children. They need 6 more weeks to finish evacuating safely, with their work and their lives intact. I am not violating your order out of disrespect. I am staying because leaving now means abandoning people who trusted me to keep them safe. When they are gone, I will go too. The deadline was 100 days, Vren said. It was generous. It accounted for the difficulties of migration. It did not account for excuses. With respect, Marshal, it did not account for the fact that you gave an entire species 100 days to abandon everything they built, and expected them to do it without anyone falling behind. My people are not falling behind because they are careless. They are behind because they are careful, and because their work matters to them. There was a pause. Vren's expression, if it could be called that, did not change, but something in the stillness of the moment suggested the answer had not been the one expected. You understand, Vren said finally, that I command 412 vessels in this fleet alone. You command 1. If I choose to enforce the order now, your ship and everyone aboard it will be destroyed within minutes, and the station behind you will be evacuated by force, regardless of what state its research is in. I understand the math, Marshal, Elias said. I did it myself before you arrived. I'm still here. Yuki, standing just behind Elias's shoulder, felt her heart hammering, but she kept her face still, the way she had trained her whole career to do. Around the bridge, she could see the same tension in every crew member, the same fear held tightly in check by discipline, and by something else, something that had grown in the ship over the last few days, as word of Elias's decision had settled into every corner of it. Pride. A strange, stubborn pride that none of them had expected to feel this close to death. Vren studied Elias for a long moment through the screen. Then the fleet marshal did something unexpected. It laughed, a short, dry sound that did not seem entirely unkind. "You are either the bravest human I have encountered," Vren said, "or the most foolish. In my experience, those two things often look identical from a distance. I will grant you 7 days, Captain Marsh. 7 days for your station to prepare a partial evacuation, enough that I can report genuine progress to my superiors. At the end of 7 days, if the steadfast has not begun withdrawal, I will treat this as a formal act of war by the human species, and I will respond accordingly. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand," Elias said. "Then use your 7 days wisely, Captain. I do not offer second chances of my own, only the ones your species has already named for itself." Vren's mouth curved into something almost like a smile. "A fitting name, is it not? Second chance. I wonder if your people will get one." The channel closed. The Dominion fleet held position at the edge of the system, a silent wall of ships watching, waiting. Elias exhaled slowly and turned to his crew. 7 days, he said. "Yuki, get me Second Chance's station director. Tell her what we bought and what it cost to buy it. Priest, I want a full defensive assessment of everything we've got, and I want it honest, not hopeful. Osei, keep listening to every channel that fleet is using. If they're talking to each other, I want to know what they're saying, even if we can't understand all of it yet." The crew scattered to their tasks, and Elias allowed himself, for just a moment, to lean against the command chair and breathe. 7 days would not be enough to finish the evacuation properly, but it was more than they'd had an hour ago, and in Elias's experience, more time was never worth nothing. Down on Second Chance, Station Director Amara Osei Bello, no relation to the Steadfast's navigator despite the shared name, received the news with a mixture of relief and guilt that made her sick to her stomach. She had spent the last 3 days watching Elias's ship sit alone against an empire, because of a discovery her team had made and reported without thinking twice about the consequences. 7 days, she repeated to her senior staff, gathered in the station's main hall among crates half-packed with research equipment. "We need to move faster. Prioritize the people first, then the irreplaceable data, then whatever equipment we can carry. Everything else stays." "Director," said Dr. Farrow, the physicist who had first detected the ancient ship in the nebula, "some of the equipment can't just be abandoned. It took years to build, and without it, we're a research station," Amara said. "With it, but dead, we're nothing. People first. I don't want to hear that argument again." Farrow nodded, chastened, and went back to work. Out among the packing crates, a group of station children had gathered by a viewport, watching the distant lights of the Dominion fleet. One of them, a girl of about 10 named Talia, pressed her hand against the glass. "Is that ship going to fight all of them?" she asked her older brother. He didn't answer right away. He was 16, old enough to understand the numbers, young enough to still hope the numbers were wrong. "Captain Marsh isn't going to let them hurt us," he finally said. "That's what everyone's saying." "But there's so many of them," Talia said. "I know." Word of the standoff had, by now, reached every corner of human space. On Earth, in New Delhi, a crowd gathered outside a public broadcast screen to watch grainy footage relayed from Second Chance's outer sensors, showing the Steadfast sitting small and defiant against the massed lights of the Dominion fleet. On Mars, factory workers on their lunch break stopped to listen to the news feed in silence. On New Kavanaugh, in a bar near the shipyards, a retired fleet engineer raised a glass and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "That's the kind of captain we used to build ships for." Not everyone felt pride. The Human Defense Council was furious. Admiral Rhea Okafor called an emergency session within hours of hearing the news, her voice sharp with a mix of anger, and something that, if she was honest with herself, was closer to fear for Elias's life than fury at his choice. "He disobeyed a direct order," Counselor Zhao said. "He's put every human colony at risk of retaliation. If the Dominion decides this is an act of war, it won't stop at one ship. It could mean all of us." "He bought us 7 days, Rhea said. 7 days the rest of our people didn't have to give, and he did it without firing a single shot." She looked around the table at the tense, tired faces of the council. I don't like what he did. I like even less what it says about the rest of us, that one captain had to do it alone, because the rest of us were too afraid. The council did not reach a decision that day, but quietly, without an official vote, ships began moving. Small ones first, fast scouts and couriers, then a handful of older cruisers pulled from the reserve fleet, gathering at a staging point 3 days' travel from Second Chance. Nobody called it reinforcement. Officially, it was a contingency measure in case evacuation assistance was needed. Unofficially, everyone in the fleet understood exactly what it was. Back at Second Chance, the 7 days moved fast and slow at once, the way time does when every hour matters, and none of them feel like enough. The station worked around the clock. Ships arrived one by one from other human outposts nearby, small transports that had been given special permission to make one last run before the border closed, filling their holds with people and data and as much equipment as they could carry. Elias watched it all from the Steadfast's bridge, tracking every ship, every hour, every small victory of a family safely aboard a transport. A lab's most important research successfully archived and sent away. He did not sleep much during those 7 days. Neither did Yuki, who spent long hours beside him, running numbers on what the ship's shields and weapons could realistically survive if the Dominion decided the answer to their patience was violence after all. Best case, she told him on the 5th night, her voice tired but steady. We survive maybe 4 minutes of a full engagement with that fleet. Best case. Then we make sure we don't need 4 minutes, Elias said. We need enough time for the last transport to clear the system. That's all we need. And if it's not enough... Elias looked at the view screen, at the distant lights of the waiting fleet, at the station behind them still working, still hoping, still trying to save what could be saved. Then it's enough that we tried, he said. Some things are worth trying even when the math says no. On the 7th day, with the last transport loaded, and Second Chance reduced to a skeleton crew of essential staff, still finishing the final archive transfers, Fleet Marshal Vren Talcorin opened a channel to the Steadfast once more. This time, the Dominion fleet's weapons were no longer dark. Your 7 days are finished, Captain Marsh, Vren said. The station is not fully evacuated. I see people still aboard, still working. Explain to me why I should not consider this a failure of your promise. Elias stood tall in front of the screen, and behind him, his crew held their positions, steady despite the fear. Because I never promised a full evacuation, Marshal, he said. I promised progress, and you'll find plenty of it if you check your own sensors. What's left aboard that station is 30 people archiving the last of humanity's research on the ship your empire has spent thousands of years being afraid of. Give us 6 more hours, and they'll be done, and gone, and you'll never have to think about us again. Vren was silent for a long moment, studying the human captain through the screen, the same stillness in his strange, unblinking eyes. 6 hours, Vren said at last. And Captain Marsh, know that I am not offering this out of kindness. I am offering it because my superiors are curious about a species that stands its ground against odds like these without a single shot fired in anger. Do not mistake curiosity for mercy. It rarely lasts as long as you might hope. The channel closed, and the Steadfast held its position for 6 more hours, every second of it heavy with the knowledge that this could not last forever, that somewhere beyond the patience of one curious fleet marshal, the full weight of an ancient empire was still waiting. The 6 hours passed like a held breath. On Second Chance, the last 30 staff members worked without stopping, moving crates, sealing data cores, running final checks on the archive transfer that held years of research, including everything they had learned about the ancient dead ship in the nebula. Director Amara Osei-Bello worked alongside them, refusing to leave until every last person under her care was safely aboard the final transport. At the 4-hour mark, Dr. Farrow found her in the archive room, sealing the last core into its transport case. That's everything, he said. All the data on the architect's ship, backed up 3 times over. If the Dominion ever wants to erase what we found, they'll have to erase it from every human world at once. Amara allowed herself a tired smile. Good. Get it aboard the transport. You're on it too, Doctor. No arguments this time. What about you? I'm the last one off my own station, she said. That's not up for debate either. At the 5-hour 40-minute mark, the final transport undocked from Second Chance, carrying the last 30 staff members and the last of the research data into the dark, angling away from the station and toward the safety of the staging fleet 3 days out. Amara stood in the transport's small viewport, watching the station shrink behind them. This place she had built a life around for 6 years, now empty and dark and waiting for whatever would come next. On the Steadfast's bridge, Osei's voice cut through the tense quiet. "Captain, last transport confirms clear of the station and accelerating away from the system. Second chance is empty." Elias closed his eyes for just a moment, relief washing through him, so strongly it nearly buckled his knees. "Confirmed," he said, opening his eyes again, steady once more. "Open a channel to Fleet Marshal Vren." The bronze-skinned commander appeared on the screen a moment later, his strange eyes taking in the readout that had, no doubt, already reached his own sensors. "Your evacuation is complete, Captain Marsh. Ahead of your own deadline, I note, and within mine." "As promised, Marshal," Elias said. "Second chance is empty. The Steadfast will now begin its own withdrawal, as ordered." "Will it?" Vren said, and there was something in his tone that made the hair on the back of Elias's neck stand up. "That was the arrangement," Elias said carefully. "It was," Vren agreed. "But arrangements are made by individuals, Captain, and individuals do not always speak for the whole of an empire. While you and I have been discussing patience and curiosity, my superiors have been discussing something else entirely. They have reviewed the data your outpost transmitted about the Architect vessel. They have concluded that your species cannot be trusted to simply forget what it found, no matter how far you withdraw. A species that discovers something that dangerous and shares it freely, without hesitation, without understanding what it might mean, is a species that will find something dangerous again. And again, until eventually it finds something that cannot be contained." "That's not fair," Elias said, though even as he said it, he understood how little fairness would matter here. "We didn't know what we'd found. We were curious. That's not a crime." "No," Vren said. "It is simply what your species is, curious, persistent, unwilling to leave a locked door unopened, even when 1,000 other species learned long ago that some doors are locked for good reason. My superiors have decided that the risk you represent outweighs the value of a peaceful withdrawal. The order has changed, Captain Marsh. It is no longer withdrawal, it is neutralization." The bridge went utterly silent. Even the soft hum of the ship's systems seemed to fade into the background, as every crew member absorbed what that word meant. "Neutralization of what exactly?" Elias asked, though he already knew the answer, and asked only because some part of him needed to hear it said plainly. "Of the threat, Captain. Your ship first, as the most immediate and defiant symbol of it. And then, in time, unless your species can demonstrate it understands the danger it poses to itself and others, perhaps more than your ship." "You're talking about the destruction of an entire species," Elias said, his voice low and hard, "over a research report." "I am talking about 11,000 years of hard lessons, Captain Marsh, most of them written in the blood of species, who thought curiosity was harmless too. I take no joy in this, but I did not write the law, and I do not have the authority to overturn it. I can only tell you that your fleet has 3 minutes to begin retreat before I am ordered to open fire. I would recommend you use them." The channel closed. Elias stood very still for a moment, and then he turned to his crew, and every one of them was looking at him, waiting. "Well," he said, his voice steadier than he felt, "I suppose that answers whether curiosity really did kill the cat." Nobody laughed, but a few of them managed thin, tight smiles, and Elias took that as enough. "Yuki, status on the rest of our fleet's staging point?" 3 days out, sir. Too far to help." "Then we're on our own." He looked at the view screen, at the vast, silent wall of Dominion ships, weapons no longer dark, waiting for the order. "Everyone, listen to me. We are not going to win this fight in the way that word usually means. 400 ships against 1. Nobody in this room is under any illusion about that math. But we are not going to run either, because running means abandoning everything we just spent 7 days protecting. So here is what we are going to do instead. We are going to make this cost them more than they expect, and we are going to buy every second we can for the human fleet 3 days out to reach us, or for someone, somewhere, to find another way to stop this before it becomes something the whole galaxy remembers as a slaughter." "Sir," Priest said from the weapons station, his young voice tight but controlled. Orders? Elias thought for a moment, running through everything the Steadfast could do, every trick built into its systems by an engineer who loved this ship like a child. Callum, he said, turning to the engineer, how fast can you overload the sensor jamming array and turn it into a full-spectrum pulse? Callum blinked. That'll fry the array completely, sir, and probably knock out half our own sensors with it. But maybe 90 seconds? Do it. If we're going to be blind, so are they, at least for a little while. Osei, the second that pulse goes off, take us into the debris field near the outer edge of the system. It's thick enough to break up a lot of sensor and weapons lock, and their ships are too big to follow us into the tightest parts of it. That debris field is what's left of an old asteroid mining operation, Osei said. It's a maze in there, sir, but a dangerous one. We could just as easily wreck ourselves as escape them. I know the risk. Do it anyway. Priest, the moment we're inside, I want every countermeasure and decoy drone we have deployed. Make them think there's more of us in there than there really is. Buy confusion. Confusion buys time. The bridge crew moved fast, hands flying across their stations, years of training collapsing into seconds of pure focused motion. Elias watched the enemy fleet on the screen, counting down the 3 minutes Vren had given them, feeling every second of it in his chest. At 2 minutes and 50 seconds, the first Dominion weapons fire lit up the darkness, a warning shot across the Steadfast's bow, close enough to rattle the hull. That's the signal, Elias said. Callum, now. The sensor array overloaded in a blinding pulse of energy that washed out every screen on the Steadfast's bridge for 3 full seconds, and, more importantly, did the same to every sensor system on the nearest dozen Dominion ships. In that brief window of chaos, Osei threw the Steadfast into a hard burn toward the debris field, the ship groaning under the strain of the sudden acceleration, crew members gripping their stations as the artificial gravity struggled to keep pace. Behind them, the Dominion fleet opened fire in earnest, weapons fire lancing through the space where the Steadfast had been only seconds before, and the great empire that had never lost a major war in 11,000 years, found itself, for the first time and longer than anyone aboard those ships could remember, chasing something it could not immediately catch. The Steadfast plunged into the debris field, an ancient graveyard of broken mining rigs and shattered asteroid fragments, and disappeared into the dark. Inside the debris field, the Steadfast moved like a fish through weeds, threading between broken chunks of old mining equipment and asteroid fragments the size of buildings. Alarms chirped softly across the bridge, warning of near misses, of hull scrapes, of 100 small dangers that would have been catastrophic anywhere else, but felt almost gentle, compared to what waited outside the field. Report, Elias said, gripping the arm of his command chair, as the ship banked hard around a jagged spar of metal that had once been part of a mining platform. Minor hull damage, sections 4 and 7, Callum called out. Nothing critical. Sensors are still fuzzy from our own pulse, but they're coming back online. Enemy fleet? Osei checked her readouts, squinting through the residual static. Scattered at the edge of the debris field, sir. Looks like most of them are too big to follow us in without serious risk to their own hulls. I'm reading a handful of smaller craft, fighter class, entering the field after us. 6 of them, maybe 8. Weapons status, Priest? Rail cannons charged and ready, sir. Point defense systems online. If those fighters catch up to us, we can handle 6 or 8 of them. It's the 400 capital ships outside that worry me. Elias nodded slowly, thinking fast. The debris field would not protect them forever. Eventually the Dominion would either find a way to root them out, or simply surround the field and wait for the Steadfast to run out of options, and time was a resource an empire with 11,000 years of patience could afford far better than a single human ship with a finite supply of everything. Osei, take us deeper, toward the old central mining station. There should be enough metal and old machinery in there to really scramble their sensors, and if we're lucky, some cover big enough to hide behind if we need to make repairs. Copy that, sir. The Steadfast wound deeper into the debris field, the ancient bones of a long-abandoned mining operation growing thicker and denser around them, until the central station itself came into view. A massive skeletal structure of rusted metal and dead lights, easily a kilometer across, floating silent and still in the dark. Bring us in close on the far side, Elias said. Use the station's mast to block their sensors from this angle. As the ship settled into position, tucked against the shadow of the old station, Priest's console lit up with new contacts. "Sir, 6 fighters incoming. They've picked up our trail." "Let them come," Elias said grimly. "Point defense and rail cannons. Focus fire as they clear the wreckage. Don't let them get close enough to call in our position to the main fleet." The Dominion fighters were fast and nimble, sleek dark shapes weaving through the debris, with far more grace than the Steadfast's larger hull could manage. But Priest and his weapons crew had trained for exactly this kind of close, brutal engagement. The Steadfast's twin rail cannons, built for punching through capital ship armor, tore 2 of the fighters apart before they even cleared the wreckage field, the explosions lighting up the dark in brief, violent flashes. Point defense turrets swept the remaining 4, forcing them to scatter and break formation, their own weapons fire chewing harmlessly into asteroid fragments instead of the Steadfast's hull. "2 more down," Priest called out. "2 retreating, sir. Looks like they're pulling back to report our position." "Let them," Elias said. "We knew we couldn't stay hidden forever." "Osei, status on repairs?" "Callum says another 20 minutes for the hull breaches, sir. We're not going anywhere fast until then." Elias looked at the tactical display, watching the 4 Dominion fighters that had survived scatter back toward the edge of the debris field, no doubt already reporting the Steadfast's rough position to Fleet Marshal Vren and the waiting capital ships beyond. 20 minutes. It felt like both an eternity and no time at all. Far beyond the debris field, aboard his flagship, Fleet Marshal Vren Talcorin received the report from his returning fighters with a stillness that unsettled even his own senior officers. "1 ship," he said quietly, almost to himself. "1 ship, destroying 2 of my fighters and evading 400 capital vessels for the better part of an hour." "Marshal," said his second-in-command, a sharp-eyed officer named Sail Dresch, "shall we commit the full fleet into the debris field? We could crush them through sheer numbers, regardless of the risk to our hulls." Vren considered this for a long moment, watching the tactical display, the small green marker representing the Steadfast hidden somewhere in that maze of broken metal. "No," he said finally. "That is precisely what a desperate commander would do, and precisely what an experienced one would avoid. We do not need to catch this ship today. We need only to ensure it cannot escape this system. Position the fleet in a perimeter around the debris field's exits. Let Captain Marsh exhaust his supplies, his crew's strength, his options. Time favors us, Sail, not him. It always has. And if human reinforcements arrive, then we will deal with them as well," Vren said. "Though I confess, Sail, some part of me is curious to see how far this captain's stubbornness will carry him before it finally runs out of road." The perimeter closed around the debris field like a slow, patient noose. 400 Dominion warships arranging themselves at every possible exit point, content to wait, exactly as their fleet marshal had ordered. Aboard the Steadfast, 20 minutes stretched into an hour, as Callum's repair teams worked through the hull breaches, patching what they could, reinforcing what they couldn't fully fix. Elias used the time to walk the ship, something he rarely did during an active crisis, but something that felt necessary now, a way of looking his crew in the eye and letting them see that he was still steady, even if none of them, himself included, knew exactly how this would end. He found Yuki in the ship's small medical bay, checking on a young crewman who had been thrown against a console during the hard burn into the debris field, a minor injury, nothing serious. But Yuki sat with him anyway, talking quietly, the way she always did with the younger crew members when their nerves needed steadying more than their bodies did. "How are we looking?" Elias asked, leaning against the doorway. "Scared," Yuki said honestly. "Everyone is. But nobody's asking to leave, sir, if that's what you're really asking." Elias allowed himself a small, tired smile. "That's not nothing." "No," Yuki agreed. "It isn't." Back on the bridge an hour later, with repairs complete and the ship's systems running as close to full strength as they were going to get, Elias sat in his command chair and studied the tactical display, the ring of Dominion ships surrounding the debris field on every side, patient and unmoving. "They're not coming in after us," Osei said. "They're just waiting." "Vren's smarter than I gave him credit for," Elias admitted. "He doesn't need to risk his fleet in here. He just needs to keep us bottled up until we run out of food, fuel, or nerve, whichever comes first." "Do we have a way out, sir?" Priest asked. Elias studied the display for a long moment, an idea slowly forming, one that felt equal parts brilliant and insane, the kind of idea that either worked spectacularly or ended everything very quickly. "Oh, say," he said, "pull up everything we archived from Second Chance about the architect ship in the nebula. Every scrap of data Dr. Farrow's team collected before we evacuated them." Yuki frowned. "Sir, that ship's derelict. It's been dead for thousands of years. What good does it do us now?" "Maybe none," Elias admitted. "But the Dominion has spent 11,000 years being afraid of whatever built that thing. And fear, Yuki, has a way of making even the most patient enemy do something reckless, if you point it in the right direction." He looked at the growing star map on the main screen, the icon marking the ancient derelict ship still drifting quietly in the nebula, just past the edge of the debris field, well within reach if the Steadfast could find a way past the waiting Dominion fleet. "We're not going to outrun them," Elias said, "and we're not going to outgun them. But maybe, just maybe, we can outthink them. Get me everything we know about that ship, and get me Dr. Farrow on a secure channel. I have some questions for him, and I have a feeling the answers might just save all our lives." Dr. Farrow answered the secure channel from aboard the transport that had carried him and the rest of Second Chance's staff toward the human staging fleet, still 3 days out, but closing the distance as fast as its engines allowed. His face on the screen looked tired, but sharp, the look of a scientist whose mind never really stopped working, even when his body needed rest. "Captain Marsh," he said, "I heard what happened at the debris field. Glad to see you're still transmitting." "For now," Elias said. "Doctor, I need everything you know about that architect ship, not the summary version. Everything." Farrow blinked, surprised. "That ship's been dead for thousands of years, Captain. Whatever it was, whatever happened to the species that built it, there's nothing left of it but an empty hull, and some very confusing energy readings we never fully figured out. I don't see how it helps you now." "Just answer the question, Doctor. What kind of energy readings?" Farrow pulled up his old notes, sharing them across the channel. "It's residual power, still active after all this time, which by itself is remarkable. Whatever technology the architects used, it doesn't degrade the way ours does. We detected an energy core still holding a partial charge, something on a scale we don't have the tools to properly measure. If that core ever discharged, even partially, the output would be enormous. Enough to light up half the nebula, easily detectable from anywhere in this system, and probably well beyond it. Could it be triggered remotely, without boarding the ship?" Farrow hesitated. "Theoretically, maybe, if you knew the right frequency to resonate with the core's containment field. We tried a few passive scans while we were studying it, very carefully, because the Dominion's own historical records suggested that ship's power system was tied to whatever catastrophe wiped out its builders in the first place. We didn't want to find out the hard way what happens if that core destabilizes." "That's exactly what I want to find out," Elias said. "Or rather, I want the Dominion to think we're about to find out." Yuki, standing beside him, understood first. "You want to bluff them. I want to make Fleet Marshal Vren believe that if he doesn't back off, we're going to trigger whatever happened to the architects all over again, right here, in his own territory, close enough to threaten his entire fleet," Elias said. "The Dominion has spent 11,000 years being terrified of that ship. I don't need to actually understand their fear. I just need to use it. That's an enormous risk," Farrow said slowly. "If the core really is unstable, and you're not bluffing, and something goes wrong." "I know, Doctor. That's why I need every piece of real data you have. If I'm going to threaten to pull a trigger, I want to at least understand what the trigger actually does, in case I have to prove I'm not bluffing." Farrow spent the next hour transmitting everything: sensor logs, energy readings, theoretical models his team had built about the ship's ancient power core, all of it flooding into the Steadfast systems, as Elias and his senior officers pored over it, building a plan out of desperation and old, half-understood alien technology. By the time the plan was ready, the Steadfast had drifted quietly through the debris field toward its far edge, closest to the nebula where the architect ship still floated, dark and silent, exactly where it had drifted for thousands of years. Elias opened a channel to Fleet Marshal Vren, broadcasting wide enough that every ship in the Dominion perimeter would hear it. "Marshal Vren," Elias said, "I imagine you've noticed we haven't tried to run past your blockade." Vren's face appeared on the screen a moment later, unreadable as ever. I had noticed, Captain. I confess, I wondered what you were waiting for. We're not waiting, Elias said. We're working. My science teams have spent the last several hours studying the architect vessel your empire has spent 11,000 years being afraid of, and we've made some progress your own researchers apparently never managed in all that time. We've found a way to access its power core remotely. A ripple of stillness crossed Vren's expression, the first genuine crack in his composure that Elias had seen since this whole standoff began. You are bluffing, Vren said, though his voice had lost some of its earlier certainty. Maybe, Elias said, but consider the position you're in, Marshal. If I'm bluffing, you lose nothing by giving my ship and my species room to leave in peace. If I'm not bluffing, and your fleet forces my hand, you're about to find out exactly why your ancestors were so afraid of this ship in the first place, except this time, it happens with 400 of your warships sitting close enough to feel it firsthand. Either way, Marshal, attacking me now is the only option that guarantees you lose something. The channel was quiet for a long moment. Elias could see Vren conferring silently with unseen officers off-screen, the fleet marshal's composure visibly straining under a decision that, for the first time in this entire encounter, was not entirely his own to make. You would risk destroying yourself, and everyone on that ship, and possibly this entire system, over a matter of principle? Vren finally asked. I already told you, Marshal. Some things are worth the risk, even when the math says no. Elias let that sit for a moment before continuing. But I don't actually want to find out what that core does, Marshal, any more than you do. I don't want to destroy anything. I want my ship to leave in peace, and I want your empire to understand something important about my species, before you decide the rest of us are worth destroying over one honest mistake. We didn't come here looking for your secrets. We stumbled onto them because we're curious, because we ask questions, because we don't stop exploring just because something might be dangerous. That's not a flaw you can fix by wiping us out. It's the same thing that will make us useful to anyone smart enough to work with us instead of against us. Another long silence. Then Vren spoke, his voice carrying a weight that suggested he was choosing his words with unusual care. I cannot speak for the full council of the Dominion, Captain Marsh. That decision is beyond my authority. But I can tell you this, no species in 11,000 years has stood before a Dominion fleet the way you have, without an army behind them, without allies, without any realistic chance of victory, and refused to yield regardless. Whether that makes your species brave or simply reckless is a question my superiors will debate for a very long time. For now, I am willing to grant a formal stand-down. My fleet will withdraw to the system's edge. You will be permitted to depart with your ship intact, and your species will be given 90 days, not to withdraw from all Dominion space as originally ordered, but to present a formal case to the Dominion Council for continued limited presence in this sector, provided the architect data is shared fully and under strict oversight. This is not peace, Captain. It is only a chance at one. Elias felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't realized was clenched so tight. That's more than I expected, Marshal. Do not mistake it for generosity, Vren said. It is caution and curiosity, and perhaps a small, grudging respect for a captain who was willing to gamble everything rather than abandon those under his protection. Whether that respect extends to your entire species remains to be seen. That will be for you to prove, Captain Marsh, not for me. The Dominion fleet began its withdrawal within the hour, ship by massive ship pulling back from the debris field's perimeter, until the space around Second Chance and the quiet, ancient nebula was empty once more, save for the Steadfast, still holding its position, still exactly where Elias had chosen to make his stand. 3 days later, the human staging fleet finally arrived, 12 ships strong, too late to help, but not too late to escort the Steadfast and the evacuated staff of Second Chance safely home. Elias stood on the bridge as the small fleet approached, watching the familiar shapes of human ships fill his view screen for the first time, in what felt like a lifetime, though it had only been a little over a week. Admiral Rhea Okafor's face appeared on the comm screen, her expression a complicated mixture of relief, anger, and something that looked very much like pride, though she would never have admitted to all three at once. Captain Marsh, she said. You have a great deal of explaining to do when you get back. Yes, ma'am, Elias said. I imagine I do. You disobeyed a direct order. You nearly started a war with an empire that could have erased our entire species without breaking a sweat. And somehow, Rhea continued, shaking her head slowly, you talked your way into 90 days and a seat at their negotiating table, which is 90 days and a seat more than the rest of us managed, with an entire council full of diplomats. I got lucky, Admiral. No, Rhea said. You got brave, Captain, and you got smart, and this time, at least, that turned out to be enough. Welcome home. The Steadfast turned toward Earth, alongside the rest of the fleet, carrying its tired, proud crew, and the weight of a decision that would echo through human history for generations to come. The story of the one ship that refused to run, the captain who stood his ground against an empire 11,000 years old, and the 90 days that followed, days that would decide whether humanity's place among the stars had just begun, or was about to end before it had truly started. Back on Second Chance, now empty and dark, the old station drifted quietly near the nebula, waiting for the day, not too far off now, when its people might return to finish what they had started. And deep within that nebula, the ancient architect ship drifted on, as it always had, silent, patient, its true secrets still untouched, still waiting for whoever proved brave enough, or foolish enough, to finally come looking for the truth. Elias Marsh stood on the bridge of the Steadfast as Earth grew larger on the view screen, and for the first time in over a week, he allowed himself to simply breathe, knowing that whatever came next, in the courts of the Dominion Council, or the councils of his own worried, hopeful people, his crew, and the 300 people of Second Chance, and Second Chance itself, had come home. And that, more than any empire's respect, was the only victory he had ever truly needed.